Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the ASAP service. What changed while you weren't looking? The new era of ASAP webinar. We have options for you if you have to ask a question or you have a chat. If you look at the top right-hand corner, you can see a Q&A and a chat section. You can enter any information or questions that you might have in the Q&A or chat. We prefer you to use Q&A if you are able to. We will get to your questions as we can. We will have some break sessions within the roundtable where we will get to your questions. So if you can be patient with us, and we will get to all the questions we can. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Glenn Bischoff, to start the webinar.
Greetings, everyone. As Julie said, I am Glenn Bischoff. I am the content specialist for Mission Critical Partners, which is actively engaged in the ASAP service implementation initiative. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. We have a great program planned for you. So what if the automated secure alarm protocol that you thought you knew isn't the same anymore? Over the past few years, the ASAP landscape has evolved significantly. From new implementation models featuring cloud-hosted platforms and modern API integrations to the growing role of managed service providers, the environment has shifted fast. This panel discussion will bring you up to speed on critical changes that will impact how your emergency communications center operates today and well into the future. Specifically, you're about to hear from experts across the ASAP ecosystem as they break down what has changed and why it matters, how evolving standards and technology are affecting ECC operations, and what your center should be considering next. Let's now meet the panel. First, we have Adam Brandfass, Director of Product Management for Motorola Solutions. Next, Morgan Hertel, Vice President of Technology and Innovation at Rapid Response Monitoring. And finally, Karen Carlson, Vice President and General Manager of ASAP Service. Thank you all for taking some time to join us today, and we're really looking forward to your insights. Before we go on, I'd like to recognize Motorola Solutions as an ASAP Platinum partner, supporting both development efforts and ongoing thought leadership in this space. Next, I'd like to remind the audience of what Julie said at the very top, that you can ask questions. We do ask, if at all possible, that you use a Q&A function and not the chat function located on the right-hand side of your screen. We will get to as many questions as we can through this event. So with the housekeeping now finished, let's jump into the topic questions. ASAP has been around for more than a decade, but the pace of change has accelerated recently. What's fundamentally different about the ASAP ecosystem today compared with just a couple of years ago? And Karen, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. And I'd like to extend that welcome that Glenn did to all of you as well for joining us today. From my perspective, Glenn used the term ecosystem a few times in the introduction. The biggest shift isn't just about that ASAP has evolved, but it's that it's even much more than an ecosystem, than a single connection. We have some of those partners here with us today in this ecosystem. It used to be a fairly straightforward integration. Basically the legacy ASAP as you knew it was you connected your CAD system, connected to the state switch, connected to NLEDs, and then connected to ASAP. So it was a pretty complex but straightforward implementation or integration. And it didn't have a lot of data with it. Now it's a full platform. It is a platform with a lot of data, many more participants than you've seen in the past, and a lot more flexibilities in how agencies can adopt it. Much more direct, faster cycle time to start receiving that data and making decisions, right? It's not just about getting more data. It's about being able to make faster and better decisions.
Thank you, Karen. Adam, I'd like to come to you next. How would you answer that question? What's fundamentally different?
Yeah, I think and when we're talking about the ecosystem, I think you've got, and a lot of us are on here, the different stages throughout. I mean, you just see when we're comparing back to, I think you said 3 to 5 years ago, like the number of devices, the number of systems, the number of variability that's out there, and the amount of information that's being generated by all of those, it's significant. And it's something that I think ASAP saw early on that it was coming and that there needed to be a solution, and was in place to be able to do that. And I think the enhancements that have come over the past couple of years, especially more recently, really kind of tee up and listen to the other side of that ecosystem of the PSAPs and the agencies, in terms of, okay, how do we make this simpler? How do we remove some of these hurdles? So I think if you look 3 to 5 years ago, it was identifying, hey, here's what's coming, already having things in place to be able to address it. And then since that time, it's been leveraging that feedback, iterating on that, and really improving the solution.
Thank you, Adam. Morgan, what are your thoughts?
Wow. Well, the good news is that while a lot has changed, a lot has not changed. Delivery of alarms is still just as consistent as it's always been. But I think what's really changed from my perspective is a couple of things. The new message broker is now built on a modern tech stack. Before, it lived at inlets. It was a 1-to-1 ratio. It only knew how to go one place, and that was through the state switches, and didn't have any kind of external APIs or any kind of external connectivity. The new message broker is based on Amazon Web Services, and when we do that, it now allows us to connect to virtually anything using any kind of methodology, and so from the central station all the way to the endpoint, it may traverse a multitude of different things, whether that's a back through inlets. We support that, and we'll continue to support that. That's not going anywhere. So if people want a connection through the CGIS network, that's an available solution. But we can also connect to, direct into CADs and things like that, as well as offer the web-based application if your CAD isn't ready or you're not ready. It really gives us a lot of different ways to go there. We never before had that flexibility, and we do now. And that it opens up the world to what we can do.
And we'll be diving into that just a little bit more deeply in just a bit. But the big takeaway here is that some ECCs are not in states that have a message switch, right? So that this evolution is really going to knock down some barriers.
Yeah, absolutely, Glenn. I mean, prior to this evolution that Morgan explained, switching it into the AWS GovCloud, we were in 23 states out of 50. Now that opportunity has just expanded so much and really enables us to connect with ECCs regardless of where they are.
Which is an awesome capability. Okay, let's move on to the next topic question. And Adam, I'm going to come to you first. If an ECC implemented ASAP service years ago, but hasn't revisited it since then, what would surprise them most about today's capabilities?
Yeah, I think it's the scalability of the solution while continuing to keep it simple. I think that when you look across the alarm industry, there's so many monitoring stations and so many different things, and trying to solve all of that yourself or have one-to-one relationships and trying to address the scale is very difficult. And ASAP has been doing that for a long time. And I think now, looking at the ease of being able to add another monitoring station, to add new accounts, to be able to increase that impact that you have, while you also have a strained workforce, you've got other information sources and things that you're trying to address all at the same time. I think that being able to just see how that investment that somebody made a couple of years ago is now continuing to scale and continuing to add more, have a larger impact a couple of years later, and seeing with the improvements again, that the recent enhancements and some of the things that we'll talk about a little bit later on the rich data, being able to just see, oh, ASAP is setting me up for the future. That investment that I did is paying off even more now and will pay off even more in the future.
Would you go so far as to say it's future-proof at this point?
I'm always afraid to say future-proof, but it's very future resilient, I guess I would say.
There you go. Excellent answer. Okay, Morgan, I'd like to come to you next. What are your thoughts?
Well, the most interesting thing is what's coming, with the ability to be able to have a lot of different data sources now, really becomes important to be able to send additional information. Things like alarm scores are critical to 911 centers being able to understand, what's happening on our end. Uh, the, the the ability to start to be able to ingest video and audio and other types of media is right around the corner. The ASAP standard is open again. There's a really good team working on that, adding different message types and things like that. ATN 01 is coming. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's right around the corner, and your existing connection is going to be able to support that. It's going to be pretty neat as this thing starts to as this continues to evolve and scale. You're going to see a lot of new types of data.
Excellent. Karen, again, the question is, what would surprise an ECC official if he hasn't taken a look at ASAP for a while?
Yeah, and my response is going to tag on to a lot of what Adam and Morgan just talked about, but it's about that contextual data. If you go back the 15 years, it started out by just getting the address and basic, very basic alarm information. Now you're getting so much more intelligence that's coming across, and that will continue to grow and get more than just alarm signals, but more contextual data. And what does that mean? That means you can actually make different public safety response changes on the fly, right? As that data comes through, when that data comes through, like what Morgan said, the AVS 01 and you've got soon ATN 01 and hopefully a fire version of AVS 01 in the future too, is about getting that information and on the fly, either pre-programming your CAD to be able to make changes in who you dispatch to that incident, or at least giving you the enough information so that you can make really solid decisions and better outcomes by changing who you're dispatching, how many units you're dispatching, all that sort of stuff.
Very good. Thank you, Karen. Thank you all. So let's move on to the next topic question. And Morgan, I'm going to come to you first for this one. ASAP service, which is built upon ASAP, the protocol, was developed to help ECCs more effectively process alarm notifications, to speed emergency response, reduce errors, and ease telecommunicator stress. So here's the question. What are the specific ways it does that? And again, Morgan, I'd like to come to you first.
Yeah, but there's a couple of things. If you just take it at its very basic core level, in a phone call, that can take 2 to 3 minutes, assuming that, all the addressing and everything is right. And that also assumes that it's a very simple conversation. There's not a lot of complexity to it. And that 2 or 3 minutes now gets broken down into, a few seconds. It also drops it right in the CAD. Before we were talking to a telecommunicator, they were turning around and entering that information and putting that in the CAD. This changes all that. It dumps it and drops it right into your CAD. And now with some of the scoring tools that are coming, I see a question for AVS 01, which is the alarm scoring model. We can talk about that if you want to. But that kind of data is also getting dropped in. So now you're having a very fluid way of receiving alarms and being able to score them. And then also, if there's additional questions, follow-up, because there always is, there's 2.5 calls for every incident. That all now is electronically going back and forth. So instead of picking up the phone and having to call back the alarm company to ask them for questions, they find out the answers, call you back. All that now becomes a very streamlined electronic process.
Thank you, Morgan. Karen, I'm going to come to you next with your thoughts on pulling back the curtain a little bit on how ASAP service works. But why don't you talk first about AVS 01, the automated, the alarm verification scoring standard, which is an ANSI accredited standard, and it has a 5-level system for prioritizing the severity of the alarms. Why don't you start with that and then add any other thoughts you might have?
Yeah, definitely. And, Glenn mentioned AVS-01 is an ANSI standard, and that standard actually came out of the Monitoring Association, who actually technically owns ASAP. ASAP is a collaboration between the Monitoring Association and APCO. Anyway, so AVS-01 is specific to burglar and intrusion alarms. And as Glenn mentioned, it's 0 through 5 is the scoring measurements on it. 0 is the monitoring center has done their assessment or verification of the alarm, and they've determined it's a false alarm, and you will never get that call. You're not going to get that incident coming into your CAD system. 1 means that they validated alarm, but they haven't been able to validate human presence, damage, or life threat yet. 2 is human presence has been validated. 3 is that there's property damage verified in that alarm, and 4 is that there's a threat to life. And so this information is housed in a separate field inside of the alarm monitoring software. So for the monitoring centers, they have software similar to computer-aided dispatch, which basically stores information about the location, information about that specific alarm. And one of the fields is this AVS-01 severity level. When currently that is coming over into CAD as a comment. And in the next implementation of the standard, that'll be broken out into a separate field. So earlier when I was talking about contextual data, when that comes across as a separate field, you can then make changes in your public safety response to that alarm incident. So that's basically in a nutshell what AVS-01 is, or alarm verification score. Something similar is coming out later this year for threat notifications. And as I mentioned also earlier, we're looking into a fire notification as well. So this is all part of the overall standard, ASAP standard, which, Morgan mentioned the standards working group is open and in session right now. You happen to be hearing from 3 of those members right today, but there's a whole lot more people. There's another, I think, 20 people in the working group on this, and we meet every other week basically to look at how things can improve, change, and stay up with the times. It'll also include an implementation plan for how do we get all of these changes and all of this contextual data to be more actionable for the end user, the telecommunicators in the field, in the 911 centers.
Thank you, Karen. And just to clarify, the fire notification element is an element of AVS-01. ATN-01, the active threat notification element, is in development and is coming, right?
Actually, no. The ATN, the threat notification will be out later this year. I believe it's in public comment right now.
Okay.
Fire is something that will be looked at for.
It's out of public comment. It's completely done. But what is going in, Karen, is the ATN-01 messages are going into ASAP now.
Right.
Okay, very good. Adam has been waiting patiently to dive into this question, and I tip my hat to him for that. So Adam, again, the question is, ASAP service is designed to speed emergency response, reduce errors, and ease telecommunicator stress. How does it do all of that?
Yeah, so I think kind of building off of what Morgan said earlier and what we were just discussing, I think when you start to get information coming in, it's not verbal. You don't have to do the swivel chair entry. You're getting it delivered right as part of your operations. If you're sitting there within your CAD system, you're processing the incidents. This comes in just like an incident, but all the information has already been vetted. It's already there's no data entry issues. The context is there, and I think that it is about how do we leverage that context and how do we improve our decision making. And I think the ability to get context raw is helpful, but you have to make your own decisions. You have to do a lot from a training perspective. You have to decide, sometimes on the fly what you're going to do with it. I think, but that information is still valuable. So the combination of here's that information, if it's going to be helpful for your operations, combined with things like AVS-01 and ATN-01, which is why not take some of that decision making out of the telecommunicator and say, hey, look, operationally, here's how we want us to handle this. Here are the actions that we want to take, not only in terms of guidance to that telecommunicator, but also downstream actions. Here's also what we want to trigger based off that. Here's how we want to handle the routing. All of these different pieces now become possible when you're bringing in that information and standardizing that information. So I think you kind of look at ASAP is really simplifying the complexity of all the alarm systems, the monitoring stations, bringing that and distilling it down and making it very simple. In the CAD platform, we also have to support a diverse landscape of sources and events and distill that down to make it simple. And then the AVS-01, ATN-01, again, taking that and distilling it down to make it simple so that you can actually act on it.
And Adam, as I understand it, I'm sorry, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to that really quick. It's about time to decision, and Adam mentioned consistency, right? When you have consistent, structured, validated data, it means that they don't have to think about it, and that's really what's kind of reducing a lot of that overwhelm, right? Everything is consistent, and it really it's about time to decision.
And to add on to that, Karen, I mean, if you don't have ASAP service in place, there are a lot of calls that have to be placed between the 911 center and the alarm monitoring center to gather the information. And then you're hoping that there are no misinterpretations, there are no transcription errors. And so it saves a lot of time and results in better informed decision-making.
Absolutely.
All right, very good. All right, so at this point, before we jump on to the next topic question, I would like to remind the audience that they do have the ability to ask our panel questions of their own. We ask that you use the Q&A tab found in the upper right-hand portion of your screen. And we'll get to as many of those questions as we can before this event ends. So here's the next question, and Karen, I'm going to come to you first. The solution today finds itself in a completely new implementation environment marked by new hosting models and application programming interfaces designed to integrate the solution with computer-aided dispatch systems, as well as the emergence of managed service providers. So here's the question. How is this evolution making ASAP service more accessible and less complex for centers thinking about implementing it? And of the developments that I just mentioned, what do you think is the most impactful and why?
There was a few different questions in there.
So yeah, a couple. Yeah,
two
two-parter. Let's go with the first one about how is it making ASAP service implementation more accessible and less complex?
Yeah, and for me, it comes down to one word, Glenn. It's standardized. When we moved this into the AWS Gov Cloud, and we were able to move away from having a customized interface, state by state by state, CAD vendor by CAD vendor by CAD vendor, right? It allowed us to get to a point where the implementation became cookie cutter. They build it once and it's just rinse and repeat, ECC after ECC. So what that means to two different things to the ECCs and as well to the monitoring centers, right? It's about when you have a standardized API, you get to that consistency that we were talking about earlier, but it also means that your time to value is much quicker, right? It doesn't take 12 months or more to get ASAP in place, right? When we have that standardized API, once it's built with your computer-aided dispatch vendor, it is really pretty quick to get everything put in place. We're also doing things differently from an implementation standard perspective in that when we get a good portion of the monitoring centers up and running, we're bringing an ECC live, and we'll just keep adding more monitoring centers as they've been live. So again, that faster time to value, quicker cycle time for them to start seeing data digitally versus receiving the phone calls.
Thank you, Karen. Adam, how would you answer that question? Of all the things that have happened in the last couple of years concerning ASAP services evolution, how is all of that making implementation more accessible and less complex?
I think what Karen said. We're not starting fresh. I think like this has been there, this has been trusted, this has been field tested, like this has been out there. We're modernizing and removing some of the technical hurdles, which also had some administrative hurdles that were preventing, in some situations, adoption, just because of how much work it was. But then also in terms of rollout. And I think, as Karen mentioned, both of those being removed is a key aspect. I think the other piece is that you're kind of seeing it right now on this webinar. You've got the three different components all factored in and working together on delivering this. So the administrative hurdles have been removed. The technical elements are in a modern form, one that's easier to develop to, easier to iterate on, easier to roll out. And you get support from all three aspects. You're getting support from the monitoring stations providing it, from the CAD and our software side on the delivery and the platform, and you're getting support on the implementation. So I think, again, taking that feedback and seeing some of the response and getting the learnings of rolling out ASAP really is kind of all showing up in the improvements of the infrastructure, of the support teams, of the people that are helping to shepherd this across the finish line for everybody.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Morgan, what are your final thoughts on this question?
The one thing I think that we don't always talk about, but ASAP's been around for over a decade now. And we have a ton of experience with it. And I think that's one thing that you don't get until you get there, which is the experience. So, two things have happened in the monitoring center side. One, implementation has become, a normal day-to-day activity. It's no longer something special. We've all done this several hundred times now. You've got, well over 80% of all alarm systems today are already in ASAP connected centers. So turning a new ECC on is really straightforward. It is part of their normal workflow. But the other thing that's happened, and especially with some of the larger centers, is it's also driven us to a different level with understanding our data and how that works. So, organizations like the one that I work for, we're tracking everything that goes to ASAP. I can tell you statistically how long things we're taking to call it in versus how long it takes to send it in over ASAP. I can tell you, for example, that 97.3% of all alarms that we handle never get to an ECC. They're only getting, 2.7%. Very small, percentage of alarm systems actually make it. And that kind of experience and that kind of data-driven workflow now makes it so much better for both sides of this that we're long past the, sort of science experiment days of getting this done. And it's just part of the process.
Very good. Thank you, Morgan. So for the next question, Adam, I'm going to come to you first. And we've kind of touched upon this a little bit, and maybe we'll just peel back the onion just a bit more. But how are all of these changes collectively impacting ECC operations, especially regarding speed, accuracy, and decision making? And I guess what I'm wondering is, are you seeing any measurable improvements? Like, for instance, an ECC is saved 30 hours a month after implementing ASAP service, time that their telecommunicators could use for other perhaps higher priority incidents, or maybe to get a break, step off the line for a few minutes to regroup. So what are you seeing in terms of measurable improvements?
Yeah, and I'll give a plug for the ASAP website, because I think there's a whole bunch of different case studies and articles and stories on the impact. I think that I believe it's like 20 to 40 hours saved per month on this. And so I think like you're looking at it's significant. But I think that to what Morgan just said, like that's because the experience has been there. We're not starting fresh with ASAP. We've seen the impact. We can measure the impact and see really what the effect that's having, not only in addressing these situations, but also in freeing up for other situations. So I think that what I would say specifically on our side is we've seen speed in terms of acceptance and deployment and administrative alignment. I think that was, ASAP has kind of been this thing that everybody gets, that it's very powerful, it's very valuable, and the impact is huge. But because of some of those hurdles previously, it may make that decision process a little bit longer. And I think like that's really where we're seeing a speed impact apart from the overall operations. We're seeing an impact in terms of people saying, yes, oh, that's a lot easier. Great. Oh, you're already set up for it. Great. I don't have to worry about waiting for my state. Great. All of those things are really expediting it. And so that time to impact, I think is, and even going back to what Karen said, time to decision from an operations perspective is a lot faster and a lot more improved.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Morgan, what are your thoughts?
One of the things that's also happened and is a benefit is that as we've continued to evolve this and bring standards along with it, and being able to standardize this, when you start getting some of that contextual information, it's going to change the way you manage alarms on your side, on the ECC side. It's already changed how we manage the alarms on our side. And being able to do that quickly and accurately and consistently was something everybody's always wanted to do, and we're there now. And that's huge for an ECC to be able to get that data consistently.
Thank you, Morgan. Karen, what are your final thoughts?
Oh boy, so many. To kind of tag on to both of them, I mean, I see both sides of it because we work a lot with the ECCs that are already on ASAP, as well as the monitoring centers, right? And so both sides are not only improving, the time needed to process an alarm, but also that overwhelm with data, ringing phones, the back and forth, all of that sort of thing. Adam mentioned the ASAP 911 website. We also have an ASAP YouTube channel with a lot of videos, and we have many testimonials out there that talk about the amount of hours they save per month. Bob Finney from Collier County talks about saving basically 24 shifts per year, full shifts in what they're doing. And it's that, you mentioned it, Glenn, being able to go take a break. We also, we often say, well, they can go back and they can handle something that requires a voice to handle, but sometimes they just need a break. And so that's one that's, just really important to acknowledge. I will also say that once you're on ASAP, you kind of forget that you're on ASAP.
Yeah.
We have one live ECC. They've been live, I believe, for 10 years. I might be a little bit off on the number of years, but in 2017, they declared ASAP their employee of the year. Because it's just behind the scenes and it's doing so much that a person would be doing, right, with verbal and a lot of things going on, and it's just kind of taking care of it. They felt that strongly about how ASAP, the impact ASAP has had in their environment. And you folks that are on the webinar today that are from ECCs, you know what I'm talking about. You know the staffing demands that you have. You know how short-staffed you are. You know how many extra long shifts and overtime shifts they're working. And the ringing phone and the inconsistency of data and all of that stuff just really kind of has a massive impact for them in the center. So, for me, it's a no-brainer. I have a lot of years in the ECC as well, where I had staffing shortages. Happy to say that my old center now is an ASAP ECC and has been using it for a number of years. But back then, it would have been great to have that additional help with the workflow. So it is, and it's not just quantity of data that's coming through, but it's also quality, right? Getting the right information at the right time, not everything at once, being able to manage how it's coming in to CAD, how CAD responds to it. And you're still in control. You're still in control of that data and how you respond to all of that data. So it's Yeah, I could keep going.
That's the
Um,
case, here, Karen, with pre-validated addressing in the, for physical addresses. Every address gets scrubbed and then validated against the CAD. So no longer will you get calls from monitoring centers with the wrong address, and having to say, well, that's not ours, and then having them ask you to transfer them to that center. I mean, all that just goes away, just vanishes into the ether.
Yeah, and I also the simplification into the operations. It's not learning something new, which I think allows it to be that set it and forget it. Today, you're taking calls, you're seeing incidents come in, you process those incidents. Tomorrow, the incidents are still coming in, you're processing those incidents. The difference is it's all been pre-validated. It's all part of your operations. A lot of the decisions have already been made. So you're able to just reach that stage of I don't even remember that it's there just because it's taking care of so much for me. Like, I think that's such a testament to the solution that it just fits right in. And now it's okay. Now that it fits right in, how can you really maximize that impact? Now that you have this information, not only are you automating the calls, but how can you maximize the downstream impact with that context?
Thank you, Adam. Thank you all. I've heard it said that there are very few no-brainers in public safety, but ASAP service is one of them. And then everything that I think we've heard this morning affirms that notion clearly. So thanks for all of those insights. So I'm going to, again, one more time, remind the audience that they can submit a question to us via the Q&A function found in the upper right corner of your screen. And I'm going to take an audience question right now before moving on to the rest of our topic questions. And just panelists, just jump in. Is there an integration with our CAD system required? Who'd like to take that one?
I can take that one. Yeah, I can grab that one. Yeah, so if you want ASAP to be integrated with your CAD system, then yes, there is an interface or integration basically with your CAD vendor. There is also a web-based solution that you can do without CAD integration. And that is an option for agencies that might be in between CAD vendors or brands, might be going through a new CAD implementation and just have a bit out before that's going to be completed. Or just in general, your technology just isn't at the place where CAD integrated is a quick option for you. So there is that option as well. We do have a number of CAD vendors listed out on the website that are working on that have both legacy interfaces as well as working on the a direct connection. But you can also contact me or the info@asap911.org email, and we can definitely get you more information about that.
And Karen, the web portal option is known as ASAP View, correct?
That is correct. Yes, giving you a view directly into digital alarm information.
All right, very good. So Adam and Morgan, do you have anything to add to Karen's answer?
Adam can take it on the Motorola side. The same is true on the monitoring side. In terms of integrations, this is all done based on a standard that was written a number of years ago, and so that consistency is pretty easy to get done as well. Almost all the major alarm monitoring CAD vendors are done. So if you are a monitoring center and you're not connected and want to, there's a very high likelihood that whatever you're using today already has the integration done. It's just a matter of turning it on.
Yeah, that on our side, I think we see the power of actually putting it directly into the operations. I think but I think that there's that balance of speed for exactly like what Karen said. If you have your in between systems, you have different situations. The biggest thing is how can you take advantage of this, and how can you benefit your team and your community. On our side, yeah, I think like we see the power of being able to inject it right into that operations to get to that stage of set it and forget it, but see the impact every single day. So that's really where our focus is how do we do that, and how do we tie that into those operations.
Thank you, Adam. So I'm going to go to another audience question, which is related, since it just popped onto the screen, and thank you for that. We have had ASAP service for many years now and love it. With these updates and changes from when ASAP was originally launched, would there be any need to update our interface for a CAD system in order to fully utilize the newer features? Who'd like to grab that one?
I'll comment on part of that, and then Adam and Karen can take it. Um, One of the things that's going on right now as we speak is some of the new different alarm messages. ATN01 for school events and high profile things is being added to that. The monitoring centers will start sending the ABS01 levels in the slots that are intended for that. And as CAD vendors start to take advantage of those, then those will surface in the CAD applications, because that really starts to give you a lot of additional context, along with audio and video and other types of media. I think you'll see some updates coming pretty quick on the CAD side.
Thank you, Morgan. Adam and Karen, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. There's, if you're connected today via your state switch and endlets, there is no, I'll call it mandatory migration off of that connection as of today. It really will come down to a conversation between you and your CAD vendor when they're ready to make the switch to a direct connect, and what that will look like for you. The other thing I will add is, um, there's a lot of benefits even for you, since you've been on the system for a while, to making that move to a direct connect. Again, I think that conversation about those benefits is a conversation that we could have collectively with your CAD vendor. I also want to add, with a lot of the changes that we've talked about today, and kind of shifting the managed service of ASAP, there is much more support for the ASAP platform, for the connections with the ECCs and with endlets. We do proactive monitoring, so we'll get more alerts to what's going on in your system, and hopefully and potentially know what's going on before you know that you've had an issue. So a lot of things, a lot of advancements to how ASAP is being supported as well.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
Adam?
Yeah, on our side, I think, and we want our customers and just generally, we want to be making those options available and making that decision easy. So if you want to take advantage of that new context, if you want to take advantage of the support, we've already done the direct connect. We are happy to roll that out for our customers. But as Karen mentioned, like if you're happy, you're not at the point. Everybody's got a whole bunch of different priorities going on. If you're already seeing the benefits of it and it's not your top priority, that's fine. But we want to put ourselves in a position where when that becomes your priority, we're ready, and that transition is straightforward.
Very good. Thank you all. So, Morgan, I'm going to come to you first with the next topic question. And we've already heard quite a bit about ASAP Services' ability to deliver richer data to enhance situational awareness. And who wouldn't want more and better situational awareness, right? But there is a however associated with this, and that is, what steps should be taken to avoid overwhelming telecommunicators with all of this rich data while still improving emergency response outcomes?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's something that this team and the rest of the ASAP crew is really, really focused on right now, which is, it's not worth sending data over the wall if it's of no value to the other end of it. So things like video, for example, if there's video of the crime, there's something that's of value, then it makes sense to send it. If there's a video of parking lots with cars moving in it and that's not where the crime is occurring, then there's no point. And so the work is going through today to allow the alarm monitoring side to pick and choose what video is sent in terms of like a stored clip. so that you're not overwhelming the other end with video that's not helpful or not useful. Um, Live links and things like that. Some ECCs have, video centers that can look at live links, others don't. So those will all be optional as to how you want to manage them in your center. We're not going to force anything down anybody's throat just for the sake of doing it. We're going to try and deliver things that bring value and helpful to either the community or the officer safety. And the rest of it, we're not going to just send for the sake of sending. That needs to be, really scrutinized so that you don't end up in data overload.
Thank you, Morgan. Makes a lot of sense. Karen, what would you add to Morgan's answer?
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that is, once they do decide what's relevant and information, good information for them to have. The other thing, if your mobile is connected to your computer at a dispatch, your responders actually are getting that information as well. So that, if you're getting a video clip or a photo or a PDF of a building pre-plan or evacuation plan, your responders are also able to see that same information and view it when they, to Morgan's point, view it when it's safe for them to do that, right? Not when they're driving 90 miles an hour down the road. So it's really the expanding that reach of the data out to the field as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Adam, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I think to Morgan's point, like the data is not coming in raw. I think that's huge. Like it's being vetted, and also the usefulness and the applicability is being vetted. So I think that's why the data is at a high quality level for when it comes in. I think the other piece is it's more about who should leverage that information. How do we deliver it to the right person at the right time? And I think that, getting the information into CAD is one piece, but there's so many different parts of the operations. And that's something that, we're really focused on is, who should see that video? Who should get the entry instructions to make that a lot easier to go in, like Karen mentioned with the responder. Who is the right person what decisions get made before it even gets processed by anybody. So I think that when you have that high quality data, you have that vetted information combined with the ability to say, here's what I want to apply in this situation, and here's who I want to see it, and here's how I want them to use it. That's really where we're focused. And I think what's been great is all the conversations have been around this in terms of, it's not what could we provide or what could we throw over the wall. It's what's actually going to be useful. How is it going to be used? And everybody involved in the process cares about those answers.
Well, Adam, I'm guessing that vetting happens automatically. And is that a function of the AVS standard, or is it a function of some element of the ASAP protocol? How does that all happen behind the curtain?
I think, Morgan hit on it earlier with, the 97% deflection rate. Like, I think that's the first piece is like, all of those things are not coming. Then the things that are coming are now through the AVS 01 standard are now being given that level so that you can understand, okay, what am I looking at as I'm getting, signals from a whole bunch of different places, as I'm getting calls, how can I factor that in? But then you also have the monitoring station operators who are sitting there and they've done this for years. They know what to look for. They're not just going to say, send over all video cameras because maybe something might be in there. They're actually going to provide, like they work hand in hand and want a great response for their customers and want that situation to be resolved. And so they're doing a lot of vetting up front before anything even gets sent. Then once it gets sent, based on that vetting, based on those levels and that contextual information, that's where we can take that and say, okay, how do you want this incident to appear? What downstream actions do you want to apply? What information do you maybe not want to show to this person, but you want to show to a supervisor, or you want to show to a responding officer? Those are all the things where we can do it because of that upstream vetting.
Thank you very much for that clarity. Appreciate it a lot. All right, so we're starting to run short on time, so I'm going to jump ahead here. And Karen, I'm going to come to you first. And I think this is an important question. What mistakes do ECCs typically make when they're implementing ASAP service which of those is most critical, and where are our centers most likely to get stuck today?
Yeah, I think, a lot of what we talked about is reducing the probability of them getting stuck. I think there's still one thing that to take a look at is just, proper planning of their resources. That includes finances, but it also includes staffing resources. There is a certain level of staffing resources that we do need to participate in the implementation, primarily on the addressing side, testing, and then training of the end users. Not significant, but just things to kind of be aware of. And I would say the other thing is not right now thinking that it's still what it was before, right? That it's going to take years to implement versus months to implement.
Very good. Adam, what are your thoughts? Where do you think centers make their biggest mistakes, and how can they be avoided?
I think the last one is a big one, which I think is and everybody attending this is like you're getting awareness of the updates, you're understanding that it's like what's changed. I think that's it's saying, oh, I looked at it, but it had, we didn't have state switch and those types of things. I think once people realize that, oh no, those are all cleared now, then we've seen that it's expedited conversations, it's moving it forward. I think too, with the technical aspects being simplified as well, to Karen's point, also on the staffing side, there's a lot of things that can get done pretty quickly. So actually where we're seeing it is more just coordination of like, when can people meet and when can they be there, which I think is that piece that Karen mentioned on the staffing side of just making sure that you have that lined up, because that's really some of the things that slow down the process. But it's a pretty straightforward process, and again, you have collaboration across the different groups to make sure that that's the case.
Thank you, Adam. Morgan, what do you have to add?
I think the one thing that I'd want to add would be because we have a 100% address match, understanding your GIS data is helpful. So understanding and having lists of things like, well, in my ECC, we use the whole word street versus just ST or ST period. Having somebody that's available to understand how that works, we can make adjustments on the monitoring side to make those matches, but it's better to understand those adjustments ahead of time than it is while you're in the middle of validating addresses. The alarm monitoring centers have got this down. They know what to do. They know how to do it. And once we have some of that odd GIS information, it goes really smoothly. But that's the one thing that'll get you hung up, is if you've got a lot of really strange street addressing and didn't tell anybody ahead of time.
All right, very good. Thank you, Morgan. Okay, we're down to our last topic question. Karen, I'm going to ask to come to you first. And it's intuitive to think that ASAP service will continue to evolve, right? I mean, we've already talked about ATN, the Alarm Threat Notification Standard, that's about to come out at sometime later this year. Let's get the crystal ball out. What new capabilities are likely to emerge? I'm guessing that we're not done with growing ASAP service or the ASAP protocol.
Yeah, Glenn, we're definitely not at the end of the evolution. I'd like to think we're just getting started with the evolution, with the changes that we've made, and having ASAP now be in the AWS Gov Cloud, and I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, means that we're still the same high-level security solution that we were before, but just so much more accessible. A lot of it is about what we've been talking about: deeper integration, smarter use of data, moving beyond just receiving data, but making better decisions with that data, and just working, really expanding our ecosystem. I also, some of the things that we've been talking about, we mentioned that there's a standards, the APCO standards working group that happens every 2 years. So we're always looking for ways to enhance and expand the solution to be able to deliver more to the ECCs, and to be honest, to the monitoring centers as well. It's definitely a very strong partnership that we have right now. So it's it's good times ahead, right? There's definitely going to be a lot more that we can do. Maybe mobile alarm delivery with validation is going to be the next thing on our list. We'll see.
How might that work? What kind of devices are we talking about?
For mobile alarms, and Morgan, it can clarify on this
Yeah.
one probably better
Yeah.
than I can, but we're talking about alarms that are not with a fixed address.
Mhm.
Mobile medical alerts, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's really anything that doesn't have a physical address. So it could be anything from mobile ATMs, things like that, to people, to cars, to uh, even money and freight and things like that that are moving around, and being able to handle those electronically, be able to provide mapping and other telemetry information like speed or you know, biometrics, heart rate, pulse rate, things like that are all possible. Part of what we want to do is we really want to understand from public safety what's going to be helpful and what's not. We have a wealth of data that we can share and are eager to share it with public safety in order to, simplify, make their lives better, and also, provide better safety and security for the public. So this is really about also understanding what the asks are, but in the environment that we're in today, we are no longer limited by what we were, last year. And this gives us a lot of flexibility to be able to add data components, send different data components to different endpoints, and be able to interface with just about anything that's out there, including NG911 and other things that are coming down the road. We are in a very agile place to be able to do that.
So are you thinking that ASAP servers may one day integrate with services like OnStar? I mean, is that what we're talking about? Possibly?
Sure. It could very easily be able to do that. And while OnStar is and other vehicle crash detections, there's a ton of that stuff that's being monitored today by traditional alarm companies that are
Mhm.
managing crash detection, 911 calls from echoes, and there's a ton of stuff that's out there today that we're dealing with that could very easily be put into ASAP and make better for everybody.
Very good. All right, Adam, what is your crystal ball saying?
I think it's the getting to that decision making step. I think like the ability, the flexibility, the agile aspects of this. I think that whenever people were sitting around saying, "I wish that blank," or like, "Wouldn't it
Right.
be nice if blank?" I think that's there. Like we have the ability to make that happen. I think to Morgan's point, that's the part that is especially of interest is because we do blank. And I think like understanding what is that impact of like, I wish that I could do this because we then do this. We can complete those paths now. And it's a lot easier to complete those paths. It's a lot easier to structure every aspect of the process flow to be able to match those paths. So that's, I think, where a lot of the excitement is around ASAP is you've got this trusted, strong foundation that's been around, that has experience, that gets it. You've got parties that are collaborating and involved in the success of this, and you've got the group that can help connect those dots and guide people through those paths that they've been wanting to do or are really opening up to today.
Okay. Adam, I have to cut you off because we are out of time. Thank
Yeah.
you to Motorola Solutions for being our platinum partner. Thanks to the panel for their great insights. And thanks to the audience for carving out some time today for us. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thanks, everybody.